Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of E.W. Jackson for America. Great to be with you again today. And I trust that you saw the speech that President Trump gave last night at the convention, at the close of the convention. I'm going to talk quite a bit about that today and about some of the comments that he made. But in the meantime, I want to remind you it's Friday. I hope you're going to have a wonderful weekend. I will be at my home church this weekend, as I said, about 90% of the time probably. Our services start at 11 a.m. at 943 Canal Drive in Chesapeake. If you are in the area, please stop by and see us and worship with us. If you are not in the area, you want to check out the message, you can do that by seeing it online. We live stream it starting at about 11:10, I believe, somewhere around 11:10. You can watch the message there. So I want to let you know that. And let's see. I think that's really it by way of announcements at the moment. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head except, well, actually, I will say this. You know, America's Forgotten Children, this website right here, americasforgottenchildren.com, has been chronicling the murders of children since the Defund the Police movement began. Now, there are a lot of murders taking place, some of them between gang members and all that, but these are innocent children. We've now reached 640 children since the Defund the Police movement began. 640 children. I mean, it's almost unbelievable. Well, the last child to die was killed in, I thought I had that right in front of me. Her name is Trinity, because there were two. She wasn't in oh my goodness gracious, this is terrible. I hate this, but hold on, I think I've got it here. Well, maybe I don't. Well, at any rate, her name was Trinity. I've got, you know what, I've got it here somewhere. Let me give it one more shot to see if I can locate it. Actually, you know what? I think I know where I've got it. Well, maybe I don't. Maybe I don't, unfortunately, so forgive me. But at any rate, a 12-year-old child was killed sleeping in her bed. Sleeping in her bed. 12 years old. I'm just shocked that I did not preserve that in a place where I could get my hands on it easily. It'll probably come to me exactly where I dropped it, because I dropped these things in different files. It'll probably come to me exactly where I dropped it. But unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be wherever I dropped it. It's not where I thought I dropped it. That's for sure. Because this just happened. I just got wind of this yesterday, and in fact, shared it with some other people as well, which is one of the reasons why I'm. Oh, here we go. I've got it. Flint, Michigan is where it happened. 12-year-old girl sleeping in her bed in Flint, Michigan, killed when some kind of gang fight broke out. This child's in her bed sleeping. 4700 block of Canterbury Lane, 12-year-old Trinity Davis murdered. Tuesday night. This just happened Tuesday night. I bring that up to say that's 640 children, 640. And I got to thinking about that in light of this young lady who was killed, and you can probably tell this is not something I really planned to talk about, but this young lady who was killed, 12-year-old girl who was killed by these illegal immigrants. And we should be absolutely horrified by that. And we ought to be addressing it, and we ought to be talking about it. But folks, the liberal media won't talk about that either. But they also won't talk about the 640 innocent children murdered in the streets of our cities over the last 4 years. They won't talk about that either. I mean, 640. And again, we're not including gangbangers. We're not including domestic violence. We're not including accidents. We're only including innocent children killed by the thuggery and the terroristic behavior of mainly young thugs that are roaming the streets of our cities and doing so with impunity these days, because you got cashless bail and you got everything pled down to a misdemeanor, and you got everything imaginable to keep these terrorists on the streets. And one thing I thought about is that President Donald Trump needs to be made aware of this phenomenon, because he talks a lot about street crime and talks about the rise of crime in America. But he needs to be made aware of this phenomenon, because I really believe that this could be a way of him, once again, reaching out to the black community and saying, these leftists, these Democrats do not care about you, and I do. Your children are being murdered in the streets because of their policies, and that is the absolute truth, folks. That's not an exaggeration. That is exactly what is happening. Our children are being murdered because of these horrific policies that the Democrat Party has foisted upon us. Looking for a couple of these other, my file gets full for my program, and then I have to move these things to other places. And I think sometimes I think I know exactly where I moved them, and then it turns out that I didn't really necessarily move them where I thought I did. So let me see if I've got this. No, man, that bothers me. But let me move on. At any rate, yeah. Now here I just found Kate Steinle, but that goes back a ways. But this stuff goes back a long ways anyway, right? I mean, this has been going on for who knows how long. It's certainly been going on at horrendous levels since the Biden administration took over. Let's see, is this it? No. Well, yeah, I just found another one that I didn't plan to talk about, but here's a Salvadoran illegal immigrant arrested because of the killing of a 2-year-old boy. I mean, so we've got our children being slaughtered because of street violence that the leftists, the Democrats have really, in effect, engineered and forced on our country. And now illegal immigrants coming into the country, some of whom are child predators, gangbangers, terrorists, you name it. Our children are squeezed. Look, if you can't protect your children, you're not a civilized society. And we're not doing a very good job of that. And I think this is an issue that President Trump would really, if somebody watching me right now has access to President Trump, or you know how we can get access to him. I don't know President Trump personally, but I do know people who do know him personally. So I'm going to reach out to them and let them know about America's Forgotten Children, because I think this could be the issue that kind of helps put him over the top with the black community, championing the saving the lives of these innocent children. They are primarily black, Hispanic, and there are a few white children that have been caught up in this as well. Children are children, and they're supposed to be protected. And the left is doing an absolutely horrific job at that. Okay, all right. That was not really what I intended to talk about, but I'm glad I got it out there. And because I wasn't planning to talk about it, I didn't have all of my notes in front of me that I wish I'd had, so I could talk about some of these other cases. But again, and then last, don't hold me to the date, but I think it was last Friday that in Birmingham, a 5-year-old was killed when the car he was riding in with his mother and her boyfriend was riddled with bullets, killing all three, including the 5-year-old child who was sitting in the back seat. Folks, this stuff is happening almost every day now. Almost every day. That was last Tuesday. That was last Friday. This just happened on Tuesday. Who knows what's going to happen today or tomorrow or this weekend? You can rest assured that this weekend in Chicago, and this is happening in cities all over the country. You know, it used to be that Chicago had really a major share. Chicago's share is shrinking because this is spreading out now, and cities all over the country are experiencing these child murders because lawlessness is abounding, and when lawlessness abounds, the innocent are killed. So I want to make sure that President Trump addresses that issue, and I'm going to see if I can't get to him and make that happen. Okay, I wanted to get that out of the way. Now let's get back to what I really did plan to talk about, which is primarily the president's speech last night. You know, when I listened to him, and I know this is not the case because I don't think it is the case, but some of the things that I talked about during my campaign, like mass deportation, I was the first candidate, although the media didn't pay any attention to me, but I was the first candidate to talk about mass deportation. In fact, I don't think anybody else talked about mass deportation other than me and President Trump. That we've got to have mass deportation because, number one, we got to get all these people out of the country who don't belong here. They're here illegally. And number two, we got to send a message across the border that even if you get here, you're not going to be able to stay because we're going to hunt you down and kick you out. And when that message starts to take root, you know what? People are not going to keep coming because they're going to realize it's a fool's errand. Because, yeah, maybe you do get across the border, but for the rest of your life, you're being hunted down. For the rest of your life, they're looking for you. And the American people, I believe, would fully cooperate, too. And, you know, folks, the sound of that, I know for the left, it gives them chills because they think, they think of some kind of Nazi something. We've got to maintain law and order in our country, and we've got to maintain the sanctity of our borders. We have to. And we're not going to do that by playing nice. We have to be tough. Not brutal, not nasty, but tough. As I've said before, I don't hate these illegal immigrants. And by the way, we're talking about people from all over the world now. Europe, China, Africa, South America, and I don't care. None of it. I don't care where they're from. I don't care whether they're from Ireland or Ethiopia. It doesn't matter to me. If you're not here legally, you've got to go. Period. Come legally or don't come at all. And President Trump, I just have listened to, I didn't hear the entire speech because I understand it was 90 minutes long, but I probably listened to most of it, probably 80–90% of it. I just couldn't get to all of it before coming on here. And I didn't have a chance. I had a lot of work to do that didn't allow me to sort of focus in on it yesterday. So I tried to finish up watching it today. But I think I've watched the lion's share. It can't be more than 10 minutes of it that I didn't actually see paying attention to it. And that was one of the things that jumped out at me. In fact, well, you know what? I'll just go through the comments as they came. The first comment I wrote down that really jumped out at me was when Trump said, "I felt very safe because I had God on my side." And I thought about the way I end the program. We are on God's side. We are on God's side. Therefore, God is on our side. And I thought about Psalm 118:6, which says, "The Lord is on my side. I will not fear. What can man do to me?" President Trump said they've raised over $7 million for the families of Kerry Comprator. I guess that's the proper way to pronounce his name. And two other people who were injured as a result of this terrible attack that they tried to perpetrate against the president. James Copenhaver, 74 years old, who was severely injured but is now on the mend, and David Dutch, 57 years old. Both of them were shot, and both of them were in critical condition, and both of them, it looks like, are going to make a full recovery, thank God. Corey Comprator, unfortunately, was killed protecting his family. But the president, former President Trump, said they've raised $7 million for these families. Corey's family and these two injured people. Praise God. You know, it's interesting because my wife said to me after this happened, and it kind of struck me because I hadn't really thought about that. But my wife said, well, at least they will want for nothing after this incident. And I thought, well, what is it? But I hadn't even really thought about that, how they were going to be compensated, helped. Well, they're going to have millions of dollars that will, in fact, he held up a check of one of his supporters having given $1 million. And that's, I think they raised 6.7 already, or 6 point something already, and they had another $1 million added to it by one of his donors. So I would imagine that the family of Corey Comprator will get the lion's share of that, and it will never make up for the loss of their loved one, of course. And I'm sure if you gave them a choice, as any normal human being would say, I'd rather have my loved one than have millions of dollars. It's a no-brainer. But they don't have Corey. He's gone. And so they will have, I don't know how much of that they will get, but they will have a good bit of money to help make up for him being a breadwinner, no longer being in the family, and to educate their children and do all the things that they would need to do. So he gave his life, and now others have stepped in from all over the country and contributed to helping make their lives at least economically stable in the absence of their husband and father. Here's another quote of President Trump that jumped out at me. Quote, "Our resolve is unbroken and our purpose is unchanged to deliver a government that serves the American people better than ever before. Nothing will stop me in this mission because our vision is righteous and our cause is pure. No matter what obstacle comes our way, we will not break, we will not bend, we will not back down, and I will never stop fighting for you, your family, and our magnificent country. Never." And, again, it reminded me of what I say at the end of the program. Stand up, step up, speak up, refuse to back up. So, like I said, my ego is not such that I think somebody's saying, I'm listening to E.W. Jackson, I'm feeding that to Donald Trump. I think it just goes to show that this is why I support the man, because he really expresses what is in my heart for this country. And here are a few other things that he had to say that, he said he's being accused of being a threat to democracy. And he said, quote, "I am the one saving democracy." Well, we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. I certainly wish he had said, I am the one saving our republic. But nevertheless, I think he's absolutely right. He's the one saving our way of life, not these demonic bozos who are just, I mean, it feels like their analysis is, let's figure out what we can do to help destroy America, and then let's do it. That's the way it feels. Let's see how we can destroy the economy. Let's see how we can destroy law and order. Let's see how we can destroy our sovereignty and border security. Let's see how we can destroy our military. You name it. How can we do? Let's see how we can destroy women's sports. He talked about bringing the prices down. His primary tool for bringing prices down immediately is energy independence. He said on day one, he said, we will drill, baby, drill. Because energy, of course, feeds so much into inflation. When energy prices are high, it increases the price of everything because everything requires energy to produce and to transport. Everything. So when energy prices are high, it causes the price of everything to be higher. Very simple, very straightforward, but somehow the Biden administration just doesn't get it. Here's another one, quote, with great humility, I'm asking you to be excited about the future of our country. I am. Aren't you? And I've said one of the great aspects, I think I told you all this, but I was being interviewed by a reporter when I was running for office one time, and Trump. Was Trump running at that time? I guess he must have been, or maybe he was in office at that time, because I think that goes back to 2018 when I ran for U.S. Senate. I think that's what it was. But anyway, he asked me, well, why do you support Trump? And I said, well, first of all, I said, I really appreciate his patriotism, calling the country back to a love of our country, gratitude for it, pride in it. And this was the reporter for the Richmond Times-Dispatch. I will never forget. He said, I mean something real. And I looked at him and said, that's the difference between us and you. Patriotism is not real to you. It's very real to me and very real to millions of Americans. And frankly, in my view, I didn't go on to say all this to him, but in my view, it is the part of the basis of the foundation for our national progress, that we all love our country, want the best for our country, want to see progress in our country, want our country to be a place, again, of opportunity and hope and blessing and prosperity and all of that. But to him, that was not real, because he's not patriotic. See, he does not have the same heart and love and feel for this nation that you and I do. Trump's got it, and there's no question about it. He went on. He called the Green New Deal the green new scam. Well said, Mr. President. He said, "I will end the electric vehicle mandate on day one." Praise God, because that thing is nothing but a debacle and a scam too. He said they built 8 charging stations, where I forget what state he said, but they built 8 well, whatever the number was, but some fairly small number of charging stations. It might have been 10 or 11 or something like that, but he said it cost them $8 billion. $8 billion. I mean, you wonder, for that, they could have charged the whole nation's electricity. I mean, it is a scam. That's all it is. This is just one big boondoggle. These people are so committed to their own moral superiority. They think by forcing this stuff on the rest of us, somehow it just cements their superiority as human beings and all the wonderful things that they're doing for the rest of us, when all they're doing for the rest of us is making our lives miserable, making our lives harder, because all they're investing all these taxpayer dollars into something that the American people don't want, that's really not viable, and competing with the American auto industry and driving the automobile prices up for all of us as a result. It's ridiculous. I also like this. He referred to COVID and called it the China virus. I called it a little bit more wordy, the communist Chinese Wuhan virus. That was my designation, the communist Chinese Wuhan virus. He just shortened it to say the China virus. Amen to that, because that's exactly what it was. Oh, it came from a wet market. Oh, give me a break. I'll never forget hearing Fauci say, those scientists in that Wuhan laboratory were reputable scientists. Nothing's reputable in communist China when it's controlled by a communist dictatorship. Nothing is reputable. Nothing. And he said, we're going to bring manufacturing back. We're going to build it in America. And then he went on to talk about this new thing. He said he learned this from a waitress in a nice restaurant. I think he said he was in Nevada. He said, and he asked the waitress how she was doing. And the waitress said, well, the IRS is after me over my tips. And he said, well, wouldn't it be great if you didn't have to pay any taxes on tips? And I think she responded, oh, yeah, that would be great. And he said, that's how I came. He said, it wasn't with paying millions of dollars to consultants. He said, I learned this from a waitress in Nevada. So he's got this new policy now that he's going to repeal taxing tips. Good. You know, I got to thinking about that. When I tip people when I'm traveling or whatnot, or in a restaurant, to think that what I'm really doing is paying 15, 20% of whatever the tip is to the IRS. And she said, particularly because now the tips aren't mainly in cash now. The tips are on a card, and they're immediately recorded in the system so that the IRS knows exactly how much money you're getting for your tip. I guess when it was cash, they didn't know exactly. Not that I would ever counsel lying, of course, about your income. You don't do that. That's tax evasion. That'll get you put in jail. But even just keeping a record when it's all cash coming in, that's a tedious responsibility. Well, you don't have that responsibility now. Most of the tips come in electronically. But that also means that the store then knows exactly how much income you're getting on your tips. So they can give you a 1099, which is what they probably do, give you a 1099 on your tips. Well, yeah, it would be great if no matter how they gave it to you, you didn't know any taxes on it. I mean, these are not wealthy people working in these restaurants and doing these service jobs. My goodness gracious. Whatever extra income they can get from the generous customers who they serve is a blessing. He said, I want people, Donald Trump said, and I want people to be able to keep their money. Yeah, wouldn't that be a novel idea? In fact, just the idea that he said their money, because see, with leftists, it's not your money. You're just being allowed to have some of it by the government. It's not yours, really. It's the government's, and they allow you to keep some. That's their attitude. Remember Obama famously said, you didn't build that. Oh, no, of course you didn't. The government built it. So really, the government ought to own it. The people ought to own it. What a communist. He also said, quote, and I love this, at the heart of the Republican platform, and this is because of him, by the way, at the heart of the Republican platform is our pledge to end the border nightmare and restore the sacred and sovereign borders of the United States of America. And we're going to do that on day one. Then he said, that means two things on day one. Drill, baby, drill, and close our borders. Amen. I love it. And this is where he mentioned the deportation effort. He said, the Republican platform promises to launch the largest deportation operation in the history of our country. That's what we need. That's what we need. The largest deportation. I mean, because, folks, I've told you, we probably have 30 million illegal aliens in our country right now. That's my guess. It's certainly not 11. Give me a break. At minimum, with the 10 million that Biden has brought in, at million, at minimum, it might be 20 million. I think it's probably about 30 million, because over the years, all the getaways, all the people who never interact with Border Patrol, who never interact with ICE, they just get across the border. And over the years, you know, there are millions of those people who are hidden in our country. And many of them, of course, criminals. And he talked quite a bit about this. And he said, quote, "I will not let these killers and criminals into our country." Good. Because you all remember the oh my goodness, the big controversy over President Trump saying, over President Trump saying, they're not sending us our best. And then he went on to say, you know, they're sending us rapists and robbers and oh, that's racist. And I said, well, how's it racist? It's true. He didn't say that these countries don't have good people. He said those aren't the people they're sending us. And now we know they're sending us MS-13 gang members. They're sending us cartel members. They're sending us child predators. They're sending us human traffickers. You name it. We're getting some bad actors across our border right now. And President Trump says, I will not let these killers and criminals into our country. Thank you, Mr. President. At last, somebody who cares more about the American people than they do about their political prospects and about trying to take over the country at some point using these illegal aliens to do so. Because that's what the Democrats are up to. What they're up to is taking over the country, even if they have to import people to help them get it done. You know, this is just like a corrupt election in which you count dead people as voting. It takes me back to the first church I pastored, a little church in Cambridge, Massachusetts, with a very, very old congregation, very, very old family that had run the church, and it was really no longer a church. It was just it was a club. But, you know, I ended up there, and I do believe God allowed me to be called there so that I would learn some things about leadership, learn some things about working with people, and believe me, it was a baptism by fire. Well, they finally decided they wanted to get rid of me because I was doing things like trying to get the church cleaned up because it was a mess. And I was literally trying to get the church physically cleaned up. I mean, just dirt and dust everywhere. Elderly people, they didn't care. I was bringing in younger people, and we were getting to work on cleaning the church up, and I made some adjustments and all of this, and you know, tried to bring some integrity to the process and some respect for pastoral leadership to the process, and they weren't having any of it. So when they finally wanted to hold a vote, you know, because the Baptist Church Congregational Poly hold a vote to vote me out, people came to the church that day that I'd never seen before in my life. I'd been at the church 2 years. I had no idea who these people were because they weren't members of the church. They were just people brought in by the ruling family to try to get me out. That's corruption. That's lying. That's fraud. The Democrats don't have any problem with that because they don't have any. They don't have a definition of integrity or honor or decency. They just don't. They're godless people. And I'm not saying every single person. I'm not saying there are no Democrats who are Christians. All I would say is any Democrat who is a Christian needs to check their bona fides. Because if you can be a Democrat and you're a Christian, I wonder, are you really saved or are you just in a backslidden condition? Because if you're a Christian and you're a Democrat, as far as I'm concerned, you are in a backslidden condition because you don't have the discernment to understand that you are in league with and in partnership with the demonic. And it's just that plain and simple. So you tell them I said so, because that's just the way it is. So they don't have any compunction about cheating to win an election, using illegal aliens and having them vote, or at some point giving them the right to vote. You know, I've said if they were to win the presidency and win the House and the Senate, they'll do away with the filibuster, and they will revolutionize this country. They will. Our constitutional republic will be over, because they'll pack the Supreme Court, so the Supreme Court will rubber stamp whatever they want to do. And at that point, you're looking at a tyranny of the majority, because our constitutional republic was intended to preserve our rights even against the government itself. They will seek to remove all restrictions so the government can do whatever it wants to do. And if the Supreme Court is not there to check the power of that government, and you don't have a president in place who will veto legislation that violates the Constitution, in his view, it's over. Sad to say, it's over. That's all she wrote. Could we get it back? Maybe, maybe. But look, let's be clear about something. These people meaning these Democrats, these leftists, these Marxists, they're playing for keeps, because power is their God. They're not interested in serving people. They're interested in power over people. Now, they might couch it in terms of serving people, but that's not really what they mean. You know, when a bunch of girls say, we don't want a man in our locker room displaying his genitalia because he happens to claim to be a woman, the Democrats say, well, that's because you're too stupid and too unenlightened to understand this. And so we're going to make it happen anyway. And we're going to pass regulations to say you can't do anything about it. See, they're not interested in what people think. They're interested in their agenda, and that's it. That's all. I mean, Joe Biden's trying to change Title IX legislation so that he can force this stuff on women. Force these guys into women's sports. Force these big old nasty hairy men into the locker room and the showers with these beautiful petite women. Because this idiot doesn't have the sense God gave him that, and he thinks he's a woman. You know? I mean, he's got facial hair, he's got, pecs, and he weighs 50 to 75 pounds more than any other person on the so-called whatever team he happens to be on. But no, but he's a woman. Well, why? Because he says so. And when women say, wait a minute, I mean, we've heard these stories of guys actually claiming to be a woman, but they still like women. So they get in these women's locker rooms and showers, and they become aroused seeing the women, and the women then have to endure that, which in my view is really a sexual assault. Forced on them by the government. Yeah, these Democrats don't care about people. They care about their agenda and really undermining. They don't realize that they are demonic. I mean, Satan's greatest lie is to convince people he doesn't exist. They don't realize they're demonic, and they don't realize that these policies that they're pushing are demonic, and so they push them with great pride and great aggression and great enthusiasm, and point the finger at anybody who won't go along and say, no, there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with me. Say a woman in a locker room with a guy who happens to get an erection while he's in the locker room with a bunch of girls, they shouldn't be offended or be concerned about that, because after all, he's a woman. And there's something wrong with them. We need to send them to sensitivity training. Yeah, we need to get them thinking right. I mean, that is just deeply demonic, depraved, degenerate, and they're glorying in it. In fact, President Trump said, let's see if I can find the quote, but he basically said he will, oh yeah, here we go, quote, we will not have men playing in women's sports, period. Thank God. Okay, let me get to some other quotes here that are worthy of, wow, I thought I was going to easily get through these and have plenty of time left over, but but I guess my commentary takes up a little time too. Quote, under President Bush, Russia invaded Georgia. Under President Obama, Russia took Crimea. Under the current administration, Russia is after all of Ukraine. Under President Trump, Russia took nothing. And the crowd just roared. Just roared. Because he's absolutely right. Look, folks, if you've listened to me on the radio, watched me on this program, I say it repeatedly. Weakness invites conflict. Because we live in a fallen, sin-sick world. The Christian ethic is, the Bible teaches us that the strong should look out for, protect, defend the weak. The ethic of the world is the strong should exploit, take advantage of, overpower, and subjugate the weak. Now, President Trump understands this is not heaven, and people don't think in terms of Christian ethics in the world. It is realpolitik, and the only way you prevent monsters from encroaching on your country is to project strength and to be willing to back it up with action so that they don't dare. George Washington said, the best way to maintain the peace is to be prepared for war. First president of the United States, in my view, the greatest president of the United States. And he was absolutely right. You want to avoid war? You want to avoid conflict? Be strong. Show the world that if you mess with us, the price you will pay, you will regret, probably for the rest of your life. And the nation may regret for the rest of its existence. And folks, in my view, Truman was absolutely unqualifiedly right in dropping the atomic bomb on Japan. He probably saved millions of lives. And, to tell you the truth, he probably secured the peace for a generation. Because once the world saw what an atomic bomb would do and saw the willingness of the United States to use it, I think a lot of nations, even those who have or wanted nuclear weapons, would think, but we certainly don't ever want to have to use them because we certainly don't want them used against us. Again, this is not heaven. This is the real world. A fallen world, a sin-sick world. Heaven is real, don't get me wrong. Heaven is real. But we don't live in heaven right now. We live here. Oh my goodness. I'll quickly go through these others. Quote, our military is not woke. It's the fools on top that are woke. We defeated 100% of ISIS in a matter of months. And he talked about the fact that he said, oh, that'll take years. That'll take years. He said we did it in a matter of months. Our hostages better be back before I assume office, or you will be paying a very big price. That's what I mean. That's what I mean, folks. Our hostages better be back before I assume office, or you will be paying a very big price. That's that all over the world. We are going to build an Iron Dome missile defense system so that no enemy can strike our homeland. And then finally, this is not the last quote, but it's the last one I have for you today. If last week taught us anything, it is that every moment on earth is a gift from God. Boy, that's a great quote to end on, isn't it? If last week taught us anything, he's talking about the assassination attempt on his life. If last week taught us anything, it is that every moment on earth is a gift from God. I don't know whether you've seen the prophecy that was issued about 3 months before this assassination attempt, about three and a half months ago, in which this prophetic teacher prophesied that there would be an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, that the bullet would hit his ear, but that the end result would be that Trump would have a spiritual revival, that Trump would just begin to his spiritual growth would explode, and the man would become on fire for Almighty God. He made that quote, by the way, joking about Franklin Graham telling him, please, Mr. President, don't use any profanity. And he said during this little talk, he said, "I'm trying, Franklin, I'm trying." He said, but he said, boy, Trump is really a character too. He said, but sometimes the stories are a little bit better with that thrown in. He said, but I'm trying. I mean, the man really does. I've said he's the most entertaining president, I think, in our history because of the way he expresses himself. It's just so real and at times so raw. And by the way, I don't support profanity. I don't curse, but I'm just, the way the man expresses himself is just very interesting and very entertaining to me. But so he said, "I'm trying, Franklin, I'm trying." But then he says this: every moment on earth is a gift from God. I don't believe Joe Biden feels the same way. I believe there are millions of Republicans who think that way. I don't believe most Democrats do. I think they think that every moment is a gift from them, particularly to the people they classes, the victim classes, the poor, the minorities, women, Hispanics, I mean, whatever they classes as a protected sort of minority that they have to save, that every moment of our lives is a gift from them. Well, they're wrong. And the true future of this nation is in that truth, is in George Washington said, and I'll end with this: it is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey his will, to be grateful for his benefits, and to humbly implore his favor and protection. I believe Donald Trump understands that, as perhaps no other president has. It's certainly in the modern era. God bless each and every one of you. I am, as he said, he wants us to look forward to the future with excitement. I do, primarily because I know that God's hand is on our country, but also because I really believe that the presidency is about to be placed once again into the hands of Donald Trump. God bless every one of you. Stand up, step up, speak up, refuse to back up, because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit, because we are on God's side. Join me at church on Sunday if you're in the area, and join us live streaming if you're not. God bless everybody.